presentation is going to be a lot of facts. But as you will probably hear as we have our questions and answer period, but I'm more than just a facts person. Because like Mark has said, like many of you have also experienced, we have traveled this road of being an immigrant. Some of us, many of us have traveled this road of being a refugee. And there's a difference between an immigrant and a refugee. So we want to talk a little bit about that. My journey started in Jakarta, Indonesia. And my family, my parents, my dad was an educator in Indonesia. My mom was a small business owner in Indonesia. And we fled Indonesia in 1954. As you may know, the history of Indonesia as being a Dutch colony, and then it gained its independence from the Netherlands after World War II. Then President Sukarno was the first elected leader, and he began to lean more towards the communist values and philosophy under Nikita Khrushchev. And when my dad was started being told what to teach in the school system, he really felt like that was not a good indicator for the well-being of his children. And for those of all of us who have been immigrants, whether we made the decision to immigrate to the United States or our parents made that decision, it is always about our kids, isn't it? It's always making sure that whatever decision we make in terms of where we move and how we get there is based on the well-being for our children. And that's the story that my parents was also willing to be committed to, because they were concerned that living in Indonesia under that kind of government was not going to be good for their children. So at that time, the Indonesian government was willing to let people leave the country, with the caveat, of course, is that whatever you own, it now belongs to the government, right? So when you're here, we literally, about people coming with a single suitcase, that's our family. Because whatever we had to leave behind. My parents had to leave behind. I was just a young child, so I didn't care. But here was a mom and a dad, 6 boys, right? And a mother who was pregnant with the 7th child. And I think that is part of the story of immigrants, willing to take the risk for the well-being of their family. So we left Indonesia, and our end destination was going to be Suriname. Again, a Dutch colony in the northern part of South America. Because we kind of, as human beings, we kind of want to go someplace where we're kind of comfortable and know the culture a little bit so that we can kind of integrate more easily and readily. So I'm a Christian, so, I talk try to avoid preaching, but I want to tell you that that's a major part of who I am as a person. So we had intended to go to Suriname, but in order for us to get to Suriname, we had to take a ship to the Netherlands to catch a boat in the Netherlands to take us to Suriname. When we ended up in the Netherlands, my father was approached by one of his old college professors who was Dutch and who moved back to the Netherlands to retire, and said, hey, would you like to teach in the Dutch school system? And so my dad decided to accept the job because he didn't have a job in Suriname. So I got a job here, I'm going to stay here. So we stayed in the Netherlands for about 5.5 years. And the reason we left, we were able to immigrate to the United States, is because Queen Juliana asked President Eisenhower, during the time period where there was a large influx of Indonesian political refugees coming to the Netherlands. And as you know, the Netherlands is this real small country. And there was like 13 million people all of a sudden, that were populating. And so President Eisenhower, by his authority, was able to open up immigration quotas for Indonesian political refugees. We were sponsored by Fuller Avenue Christian Reformed Church, and we arrived in Grand Rapids on January 9, 1960. In January 9, 1960, that is the front page of the Grand Rapids Press. And what is also interesting, you only see that picture, but I want to show you the front page of the Grand Rapids Press of January 9, 1960. And what is interesting, one of the names on the front page, besides ours, it was just a really slow news day. So, don't make this like we're really important, right? It was a slow news day in Grand Rapids and the east side. How do we fill up the front page? Well, we go to a picture of this Chinese family coming in. The Chinese family that comes in, met by the deacons of the Fourth Avenue Christian Reformed Church, which, as you know, is a Dutch denomination. We were speaking Dutch. They can't speak Dutch. Now, how do you figure that out, right? Right? We had the vendors and the DeVosses, and we had all those people sitting there, and they couldn't speak Dutch, and we were speaking Dutch to them. But here's the other thing. Nixon bid is entered in primaries. That's the other headline. Interesting. So that's part of our history. So we came here, and somebody asked me tonight, so how did you get into the flower business? I got into the flower business because one of the deacons who came to help us settle into Grand Rapids was Frank DeVos. And if you know the history of Eastern Floral that now our family owns, Frank DeVos was the owner and founder of Eastern Floral in 1950. He sold it in 1998 to a national company. In 2001, that national company went bankrupt. I bought out of the Eastern Floral and about 5 other flower shops in the West Michigan region out of bankruptcy, and then we rebuilt it to, one of the top florists in the country. So I tell a story. Frank, I wish you were rich, DeVos. I could have gone our way. But God had other plans. So anyways, I'm married to a wonderful woman who was born in Scheveningen. And if she was here, she would tell you that I chased her all around the world to marry her. Because when we came to the Netherlands in 1954, her family had immigrated to the United States in 1953. When we arrived in Fourth Avenue Christian Reformed Church in 1960, they had just moved in 1959 to another church on the northeast side of Grand Rapids. That's where we met, because when my parents bought their first house in Grand Rapids, they bought a house in a new area on the northeast side of Grand Rapids, and we attended East London Christian Reformed Church, and that's where my wife attended. So she'll tell you that I chased her all around the world just so we could get married. Okay, but I'm not going to argue with her. We are blessed with 5 children, and we have 16 grandchildren, and we will be celebrating our 40th anniversary June 20. So we've been blessed, and we are really excited about that as well. But what I wanted to do tonight is to kind of share with you the importance of knowing about our immigration story, of our country's immigration story, to recognize that sometimes what we're hearing in the national conversation may not be the whole story. Immigration is nothing new. I mean, if you look at the immigration story, here is kind of a short version of how we have received immigrants in the state of Michigan, and from all different parts of the world. Right? It isn't that crazy, fearful, scary thing. It's just a natural progression of how we have grown as a nation and as a state. People may not know that there are many different ways that people can come and immigrate to the United States. One of the major usage of the visas that we have in the United States is the Unifying Families visas, which is there's about 750,000 visas a year that are being allocated for immigrants. About 480,000 of that is being used for those, what we call unifying families. So if you had a family member that's still in the country of your origin, and you wanted to bring that person and family here, you can apply for that type of visa and bring that family here. And that's how communities grew, right? So, in Grand Rapids, where there's a large Dutch, community, that's how they grew. My wife's parents were sponsored here by her dad's brother. That's how these things happen. And then you have other visas that allows immigrants to come here with specific skills. And then you have the refugees issue, and there's also a visa to promote diversity, believe it or not. There is a visa specifically to promote diversity. So when there are some countries that have very low immigration to the United States, those countries can have specific visas available for them if they want to come to the United States. Because the United States does believe that diversity is a part of our strength. So we talk about this, again, let me just go quickly through these. Family-based at 480,000, so you know that. Employment-based. Here's the challenge. There are 20 types of temporary visas. And the reason I want you to be aware of that is because the discussion today around what do we do with those, but undocumented and documented people. And how are we going to ask our law enforcement agencies to be able to make that determination? And I will tell you that I've spoken to many law enforcement agencies, and they'll say, please don't put that on us. Immigration law is the second most difficult to understand behind our IRS laws, our tax laws. Literally, right? So you have all these visas, and now, we're asking our law enforcement agencies to make decisions based on what? They don't know them. So, and then you have employer-based visas. You have EB1, EB2. The other one is an EB5. I think there was been some conversation recently about EB5 investors. You heard the story about the Kushner family wanting to use EB5 as a way to attract more investments from China into their particular projects. So that's what it is. An EB5 is an investor employment creation visa. What that does is that if you can find someone with a minimum of $500,000 investment, and the $500,000 investment can only be applied to certain projects that meet certain criteria. So I don't want to bore you to death with all of them, but if you can't meet those, then you have to at least invest $1 million. And the investment is not just the investment, it is also a requirement that you create 10 jobs for every $500,000 investor or $1 million investor. So if you have $5 million investors for a project, that project has to create 50 jobs for US citizens. So that's, sometimes we don't hear that. And therefore, they're only buying, the green card. Yes, they are, but they're also required to create jobs through that investment. So why immigration right now? Well, as you may know, in our last decade, we went through a horrible recession in the state of Michigan. We lost 800,000 jobs. We lost people that had to leave the state of Michigan because they had to find jobs somewhere else. And so we knew that, but since 2010, we were the only state in the nation to lose population between 2000 and 2010. But we have been on a rebound. Since 2010, Michigan has gained nearly 500,000 private sector jobs. Now, the argument is, well, there's this kind of job, and they're not high paying. And the thing is, we have to start somewhere. So I'm not trying to make this a political speech, honestly, but it is what it is. And so we are going to have to figure out how to grow our population. By the year 2040, our statistics show that by nearly 25% of Michigan's population will be 65 years or older. 2040 is not that far away. So what are we going to do with that? Our workforce, who's going to be doing who's going to pay my Social Security? That's what I want to know, right? We also know that by a study done by Georgetown University, it was done in 2010, by 2018, which is next year, we are going to have to look at replacing 274,000 STEM-related field jobs. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We are in a shift as a state. We are shifting. In 2006, a study was done by a think tank in Michigan called Michigan Future, Inc. They, at that time, said Michigan, in order to continue to sustain its economy, must begin to look at shifting from a predominantly manufacturer-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. Now, it doesn't mean that we minimize and dismiss manufacturing. No, it is still a major part of our economy. The challenge is that it is not the old manufacturing model like we're used to, you know? It's not like I can leave high school and just go onto the assembly line and I can make a great living and I can have a great retirement plan, all those kinds of things. You can go into manufacturing, but you better have some understanding of technology. You now will have to figure out how to push buttons on a computer because the assembly line is going that way. Robots are going to be a part of our manufacturing economy. So we are challenged by that. And how do we address those challenges? Well, first, the population is going to have to come from immigrants. The birth rate amongst white, traditional U.S. citizens is really not a growth rate. It's stagnant. So we have to repopulate. There's nothing, we may not like it, but that's the reality of it. And it is the immigrant population that is younger and in their childbearing ages. So that's what's going to happen, and that's what's going to be needed. In the immigrant population growth in the state of Michigan, I think this is between 2010 and 2014, is showing a 10.2% growth rate. We are becoming a much more diversified state, and a lot of that is because of the immigrant and refugee population that's coming into the state of Michigan. So right now, about 6.5% of the Michigan population are foreign-born. About 640-some thousand residents in the state of Michigan are foreign-born. What does that mean for us in terms of our economy? We also know that immigrants are also generally, by data, 2 or 3 times more likely to start a business. So in 2010, we had new immigrant business owners generating $1.8 billion in total net business income. Now, we can celebrate that, or we should celebrate that, because that also means they're paying taxes, right? And they're paying taxes that helps us maintain our quality of life. Now, we can argue whether our roads are being built or not, but they're paying taxes that's supposed to pay for that, right? 30,000 new business owners were immigrants for between 2006 and 2010. 10.4% of business owners in Michigan are immigrants. 10.4%. And remember, our previous slide says we are 6.5% of the population. And yet immigrants own 10.4% of all the businesses in the state of Michigan. Here's an interesting statistic. We can argue about, whether we want immigrants or don't want immigrants, whether we want these people coming into our big state. But just remember this, $19.6 billion in immigrant household income in the state of Michigan in 2014. $19.6 billion. They pay $1.5 billion in state and local taxes. 3.9 federal taxes are being paid. That all goes to helping all of us benefit from their ability to earn money, build businesses, and pay taxes. Here's the other part. $14.2 billion, what they call spending power. That is income earned less taxes. So $14.2 billion is being distributed for our economy in the state of Michigan. They buy cars, they buy homes, they buy flowers, I hope. All the things that we sometimes take for granted, they buy it. If you have a business and you need clients and customers, remember they have $14.2 billion that they have access to. And would you not want, if you own a business, would you not want to have that demographic as part of your market share and part of your customer base? So that's the values that we have. So then the other part is that here again, we're going to be seeing a lot of the changing in demographics. By the year 2043, there will be a shift where the minorities today will be the majority at that time. Now, we can fear it or we can celebrate it. And if we fear it, we will continue to have challenges that are going to hurt all of us in terms of our own quality of life. So the decision is going to have to be made. How do we use this as an asset rather than a liability? Nationally, so the buying power nationally and all those things, I mean, we're just going to look at some of these statistics, but the bottom line is this: there is great value for the state of Michigan to be welcoming to people from other parts of the world. There really is for all of us. And we ought to think about that in light of what will that do for the quality of life, maybe not for those of us who are reaching our senior years in age, but for our children and grandchildren. What kind of world will they be able to participate in that will continue to give them the quality of life that we would like, that we have enjoyed, that we would like for them to enjoy? One of the things that's probably one of the newer immigrant groups that we talk about is the Arab Americans, the Middle Eastern community. And here's some statistics. Dearborn, as you may know, has the largest proportion of Arab Americans in the United States. And it probably has the largest proportion of Arab Americans in the United States as well as the world, besides those who live in the Middle East. But here's the interesting thing, that in the Detroit metropolitan area, in the 4 counties around there, they impact about $7.7 billion of the economy. They pay in $544 million in state tax revenues. Because of their buying power, they are able to support an estimated 141,500 jobs. And there are also people who were born in the United States who are benefiting from that. What do we hear in the news? We don't hear this. We only hear the negative side. And what I'm saying is that for all of us, we should be aware of the tremendous contributions that they give and they provide, like all of us have provided for the growth within our state and our nation. It's just shifting. It's just the population has shifted, and we're just, other groups are doing what many of your forefathers and foremothers have done for the growth of the state of Michigan as well as for the growth of the United States. The Hispanic Latino population, interestingly, they do have, 10,700 Hispanic Latino-owned businesses. They have receipts of $3.9 billion. They employ about 18,500 people. And those are not just all Hispanics of 18,000. There are also American-born citizens who are also participating in those businesses. The Asian Pacific American population, again, you can see that they are also contributors to our nation's economy, and really, sometimes we spend a lot of time on economic and dollars amounts and stuff like that, but they really add a quality of life for all of us to enjoy. I mean, come on. Could you live without Chinese restaurants around here? Come on, right?
We do.
So I'm just saying that sometimes we need to kind of step back and recognize that there is a lot of value when we are willing to open ourselves up to the richness of other people's cultures and benefit from their entrepreneurial talents and passion and commitment. Did you know Michigan's agricultural economy is over $100 billion? When Governor Snyder entered his office, it was like around 90. It's over $100 billion now. Did you know that 28% of Michigan's 56,000 farms are owned by immigrants? I was speaking at a real estate conference in, I think it was in Troy. And realtors were trying to figure out how to help their clients who want to sell their farms because their kids don't want to work that hard. Or they found better jobs. So what are they going to do with the farmer? This is up north. This is the realtor up north. And she did not know that the new buyer's market might be the Mexicans and those from the southern borders. And what do we hear about those individuals? Not this news, right? And what I'm saying is we need to realize that the shift and the transitions that occurs in our nation, in our state, in our neighborhoods, in our communities are no different than what happened in the 1910s, 1920s, and 1930s, and 1940s. It's just a different group of people, folks. That's all it is. Unless we know the information, this type of information, we can only assume that the sound bites we hear are the sound bites that are truth. And they're not always truth. They may be somewhat truth, but they're not always true. So here it is. And you know what this means? I will tell you that right now I am in conversation, our office is in conversation with farmers who are saying, I can't find workers. I can't find workers. I posted and I can't find workers. No kids, all American-born kids want to work this hard, right? And I will tell you, it is not low wages. If you know how to pick and you know how to work hard, you can make, like according to the farms, you could make between $17 and $18 an hour. But you better know how to work. They will also tell you that because there is this toxic environment right now about the conversations around these individuals, and believe it or not, it is not all undocumented. The state of Michigan has maybe 1.4% of its population that are undocumented and working in a lot of these kind of workers. We have domestic workers around the state, what we call migrant workers, laborers, and they usually travel around. They start in Texas, they go to Florida, and they move up to the north during the season. They're stopping the travels because they are fearful of having to travel through states who have passed laws that are unfriendly to them, even though they are here with all the proper documentation. They don't want to take the chance. So they stop. So what do? We have what we call this employment-based visa called H-2A, guest worker visa. The H-2A guest worker visas that farmers are starting to use more prevalently in the state of Michigan, because Michigan used to have sufficient workers. They now have to go to an H-2A guest visa program, which costs a farmer probably between $500 and $700 of paperwork per employee. What does that do to your prices, your food prices? 2 years ago, my wife said to me, I can't believe how much asparagus cost this summer. And it was interesting she said that because just a few weeks before that, I was sitting in a meeting with one of the largest asparagus growers around the Hart area, and they said, we had to plow fields of asparagus because we couldn't pick it. We didn't have enough workers. That's why your prices go up. Now you can bring in H-2A guest workers, and they're going to go up because somebody's going to pay for, the farmer is not paying the $500 to $700 fee. You and I are going to pay for it. So these workers are very, very important to us. Now, I'm not here to tell you or make any statement on documented or undocumented. I'm just saying to you that we have a challenge in our agricultural economy. Dairy farmers are crying. And the assumptions are that we're only talking about harvesters. There are in our agricultural economy full-time jobs that are also being not filled. So we have to change our narrative. We have to begin to inform our children that there is good paying jobs. And did you know, data again, we have to stick with some data. Data shows that for STEM graduates, when they get hired, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, they will create within 3 years 2.6 new jobs for Americans. Now, people will challenge that and say, well, how does that work? Well, when a company hires that kind of talent, they're hiring that talent because they believe they can grow the company because of that hire. And when you grow a company, you will also then have more need to hire other people. The same statistic can be said about agricultural workers, harvesters. For every harvester willing to pick the crop, whether they are, wherever they come from, they create 2 to 3 new jobs for US-born citizens. People say, well, how does that work? Once they harvest the crop, it has to be transported. Only US citizens can have a driver's license to transport it. Once they get transported, they go to food processing plants. Most, I would say almost 100% of those food processing plants are people who are also US citizens. Once they get past the food processing plants, it goes to the grocery store and the restaurants. Grocery stores, stockers are, generally speaking, are young people, US residents. So that's, they are creating other jobs. Have you ever thought about it, or have you ever heard that narrative in our discussion about immigration? Immigrants are most likely to start a business as American-born, and part of it is, let's be honest, when immigrants come here and language is an issue, they have to survive. And most likely what they'll do is they'll start a restaurant. They'll start some kind of lifestyle business where they don't have to speak the English language proficiently because they have other talents and they can hire individuals to then represent them who are English proficient. That's why a lot of immigrants start their own business. What we call lifestyle or Main Street businesses, in the United States, almost 60% of those are owned by immigrants. Those are gas stations, those are liquor stores, those are party stores, those are nail salons, those are, you name it, right? That's what those lifestyle businesses are. So you can see how much of an influence immigrants have made in our US economy, right? I mean, this is important stuff for us to know. STEM, we know we got a shortage in STEM. And here's an interesting study as well. In Michigan, I don't know if I got a slide, but if I do, I'll just quickly scan by. I don't want to repeat it. In the state of Michigan, there's approximately 30,000 international students. They contribute almost $1 billion to Michigan's economy because they pay full rides, full costs, can't get aid. I mean, they have to pay. And I will tell you, I was talking to someone at Michigan State University, and I don't know if they were just, pulling my leg or not, but I think they're speaking the truth. They claim that the most difficult challenge at the end of the school year is how to get rid of the Mercedes and the Ferraris and all those things, because those international students are having to go home now, and they can't take it with them. These folks are buying cars, and you know that in East Lansing, they are building condominiums galore. You know why? From what I was told. Because their families of these students don't want to live in the hotel. So they'll buy a condo so they can be here for their kids for maybe 2 or 3 months of the year. The impact of almost $1 billion of 30,000 international students, and now there is a fear that we're seeing a decline of these international students wanting to come to the United States. And they don't have to come to the United States. There are many other fine institutions of higher learning across the world. And that's what Governor Snyder said to me when he officially opened the Michigan Office for New Americans. He said, one of the things that we are doing is you have to make sure that we are a welcoming state for these talents to be able to be willing to choose Michigan as their place to build their careers, to build their businesses, and build their families. So here, 33% of students earning STEM master's degrees for foreign born, 33%. We don't keep them here, that is a significant loss for us. 39% of students earning STEM PhDs were foreign born in 2014. Here's what happens. We don't sometimes think this way, but here's what happens when we bring in these wonderful people from across the world. They come here either as immigrants or refugees, and what do? We can't get them connected into our economy, so what do they have to do to survive? They become wait staff, they become taxi cab drivers. And one of the things that Governor Snyder said to us, please make sure that we have policies in the state of Michigan that does not create artificial barriers for talented refugees and immigrants to participate in our economy and to be able to contribute their degrees and their work experience from their home country. That's what we do as part of our office work. We work with the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, LARA, to make sure that we are reviewing all the licensing and certification processes so that we make sure that those who come here with skills are able to participate in our growing economy. Because we have a lot of job openings in the state of Michigan, a lot. And a lot of it's in IT. So we need to make sure that we have to realize that, for example, that statistic blew my mind. As a result of low-skilled employments, $512 million in earnings have been forgone. Because these engineers who are driving a taxi cab could be earning, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year versus $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 a year. And that translates into lost tax dollars and other things. So it's great. I mean, and it's, again, we just have to begin to realize that there is real great benefit if the state of Michigan, if all of us believe and begin to recognize that these individuals will become a major part of our quality of life. Refugees, there is so much misinformation about refugees, right? What do you hear? We have to improve our vetting process. I want to show you what the vetting process is already that is being done. And I want to also share with you that no refugee that went through the vetting process has ever committed a quote-unquote terrorist attack on the soil of the United States. Not one. Those who have been part of the Middle Eastern ethnic background who have committed these heinous acts were either born here or came through some other visa. The woman who came was part of with her husband in the California tax, came here as a bride under a bride or a visa. If you hear the term vetting process and you're not aware of what that means, this is what it is.
This is the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson. Since the Syrian civil war began, more than 4 million people have fled that country, leaving their entire lives behind them. And the stories we've heard have been heartbreaking. Remember the tragic stories of children who drowned attempting to reach Europe with their families. That's why, once it was concluded that we can do it safely and responsibly, the President announced a plan to resettle at least 10,000 Syrian refugees in the United States within the next year. In the days since the Paris attack, many have tried to argue that accepting Syrian refugees, who, by the way, are mostly women, children, and families, means that we'd make America a more dangerous place. This ignores the reality that anyone who seeks and is approved for refugee status in the United States must first go through a rigorous security screening process. So let's walk through that process and what it looks like for a potential refugee. Meet Rima. Rima and her children have lost their home in Syria. They've made the dangerous journey out of the country, and now Rima is seeking refugee status in a place where she can keep her children safe. First, Rima must apply for refugee status through the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. This is the international organization in charge of protecting and assisting refugees. For Rima to be considered a refugee, she must show that she's been driven from her home due to a, quote, well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion, end quote. If Rima meets the above conditions, she may be referred for resettlement in a country such as the United States. But before she can enter the United States as a refugee, Rima must then undergo a security screening process that is more thorough than any other for people entering this country. She'll have a deep background check. Her biographic and biometric information will be cross-checked against law enforcement and intelligence databases. Rima will also have to pass an in-depth interview, including an interview with a specially trained DHS officer to determine her eligibility. If found eligible, she then receives a medical evaluation. From start to finish, this process includes the involvement of the National Counterterrorism Center, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State, and the Department of Defense. All refugees, including Syrians, go through these security screening measures, and Syrians receive an enhanced review during this process. Over 23,000 Syrian refugee applicants have been referred to us by the UNHCR. Only about 2,000 have been admitted. Throughout history, we've seen that America has become a better nation by welcoming refugees in times of crisis. So many refugees and their children have gone on to make great contributions to our American society. Albert Einstein and Elie Wiesel, two Jews displaced by Nazi Germany, went on to become great Americans. We've seen great athletes such as Nadia Comaneci and Luol Deng flee communism and the Sudanese Civil War, respectively. Taking in refugees at a time of crisis is simply the right thing to do. We can and we will continue to ensure our own security while doing our share to welcome men, women, and children who are refugees fleeing violence. This is the United States of America. We can, we must, and we will do both these things.
And most of these individuals, it'll take them 2 to 3 years to go through the vetting process before they're allowed to come to the United States. And some are even longer than that, 7 to 8 years. I've had refugees come and say they've been in a camp for 7 to 8 years. Let me end it with this, because this is important for when I look at the audience, and I'm not making some judgment because I also have gray hair and I also have no hair. But here's the issue that we're also going to be facing. We are going to be facing a healthcare crisis. And here's the statistics that I think we need to look at. Immigrants are twice as likely to be doctors and home health aides. We're going to need them. And here are the doctor. I mean, these are statistics that we have. And this, what I'm showing it to you is this. It's for this reason, it's only because we are going to be needing more medical doctors to serve the needs of our baby boomers. And the talent pool is in our international talent pool. We've got to figure out a way to bring and to allow for these individuals to practice their medicine here in our state and in our country. It's just a need that we have. So, therefore, immigration has a valuable, they bring a valuable service, and we are a nation of immigrants. We have built ourselves, and this is the greatest country in the world. And we just got to make sure that we continue on and building on that foundation. And the only way we can do that is if we are well informed ourselves, so that we can at least respond to either misinformation or limited information. Let me end by this. The future is in the hands of those who choose to understand it. We have a nation where we need to begin to understand it. And we have to make that choice, or we're all going to be suffering together. So thank you so much for your time. I'll entertain any questions that you have, and I'll stay behind. Thank you.